My name is Jennifer Gray Thompson, and I am the CEO of After the Fire. Welcome to the podcast, How to Disaster: Recover, Rebuild, and Reimagine. In this podcast, we bring you the very best practices, best hearts, and great ideas from other disaster-affected communities. Thank you for joining us. Welcome to Season 3 of the How to Disaster podcast, where we help you recover, rebuild, and reimagine. During this season, we will be releasing Take Fives, shorter episodes that highlight some of our past guests speaking about similar issues, themes, topics. We wanted to do this so that perhaps it'd be easier if you only have a few minutes, but you wanted to connect with these focused episodes and guests, that you could condense all their messages into one smaller bite-sized piece. One of the things that we know about disaster is that we really have to meet people where they're at. And sometimes where you're at is you only have 5 minutes. We're very excited for the third season. We've got great guests and wonderful information and content about how to actually help get your community through to the other side. So thank you for joining us. And if you wish to find out more, please visit our homepage at afterthefireusa.org. Consider giving us a like or follow if you like this podcast. We really appreciate it and thank you for your time.
I think one important thing to point out is that when you're not a member of the community of survivors that's impacted, there's an easy assumption that if you have insurance, that means that you have adequate insurance, that you're going to be able to rebuild, that you can do all of that. And I know you've talked about this on the show before, so I won't go down that road too far. But one thing we learned pretty quickly is that at least 85% of people in our community were underinsured, and many of those severely underinsured, especially in the more vulnerable aspects of the community that was lost. So for example, in Coffey Park, 60% of the people that lived there were renters. So landlords don't have the additional buffer of having a personal property policy attached where, maybe you can rebuild your home if you use your personal property and your dwelling coverage together and you figure out how to, furnish it later. But a landlord policy doesn't have that. So we saw a huge loss of property that was incredibly valuable to our community because we have so many renters. And then we saw in addition to that, that there's an expectation that people would have first, last, and security.
Prescriptive is the key word because there's no one path that works for everybody. And that's what we have learned over the years. And I've not seen a magic wand yet. I've seen people say, oh, I got lucky. My adjuster was really nice and they cut me a check, no strings attached. And I just took that check and I went on. I didn't have to deal with the insurance company anymore. That happens all the time. Sometimes insurance companies come through great. And, our goal is to have, of course, them all come through great all the time. I don't think that's ever going to happen, because the reality is that, the insurance system, the insurance companies have a very serious kind of conflict of interest when it comes to large losses, right? Because, auto claim, $5,000, no problem, out the door, we're done. You want $1 million out of an insurance company, you're going to have to jump through some hoops. Mm-hmm. And we are here to help people jump through those hoops. If the hoops are too big or unreasonable or unfair, we try to remove them. And, we're here to give people our tagline is empowering the insured, right? So we have a pretty specific focus, right? On you have insurance. We want you to get every dime. We want to help you get through the pain process as painlessly as possible. But we need you to be realistic about the fact that insurance companies, they're not social workers. Their ads are ads. They don't have a magic wand. They are not your neighbor. They are not your friend. They're a business and they have shareholders and they have their own nut. They have to they've got to pay their employees. So they've got shareholders that they're responsible to. They've got their own financial needs they need to meet. And then they have their policyholders, their customers, right? So those are three masters that insurance companies serve.
I was a former law teacher and public defender, and Liz was an educator. We worked with poor people, and to see folks who had achieved an element of American success. These were not the classically generationally indigent. These were people who owned homes. And we're taught in America, if you work hard, you own a home, things can get but so bad. And that's what we thought, at least. And here are these folks, teachers, police officers, veterans, steel workers, like the heart of America, the lucky of whom were living in attics and cars and garages, and others were jammed 5, 6, 7, 8 into FEMA trailers. So after 2 weeks, we thought, we can't just tell these people good luck, have a nice life. Figured, all right, we'll do what we know how to do. We'll see who's building houses, and we'll go raise money for them back in Washington, D.C. And when we went to all the big groups, and this is, I think, a moment for us. We said, when's the building going to start? We'll raise some money for you. And they said, well, listen, disaster recovery has been done the same way for 30 years. Now it's 47 years, although we don't do it the same way. We've done it the same way for 30 years, can't change. Building's the third phase, got a bat in order. And so we kindly, maybe not, said, pound sand, we'll figure it out. It's not good enough. We had no grand plans, like we didn't know anything. We're just young and maybe a little bit entitled. And so to fast forward, we moved to New Orleans. We found this woman who had time before she went to the Peace Corps. She became the volunteer coordinator, and soon America's greatest asset, which is our commitment to others, to solving problems, inundated us. Tons of volunteers. Habitat ended up giving us tools, and off we went building houses. And so within the first 14 months, we had completely rebuilt 88 houses, while the traditional long-term recovery committee apparatus, well-intended, rule followers, and rules they didn't even have to follow, like self-imposed rules, rule followers had allocated funding for 13 houses. So that's how SPP got our start.
Fannie Mae provides mortgage options for you and your family. If you have a mortgage owned by Fannie Mae, you may have financial options available after a disaster, such as forbearance plans, deferral of payments, lending assistance, and counseling. Find out more from our Disaster Response Network. Go online at www.knowyouroptions.com/relief or call 1-877-833-1746 today.
You bring up a good point. Your insurance contract, at least in California, for a homeowner's fire-related insurance policy will say that you have 12 months. If there's a declared disaster, federally or statewide, it extends to 24. Now, the law has changed, and it says you have, a minimum of 24 months with a possible extension of 12 additional months. So in theory, you can get 36 months at this point. And generally, the insurance commissioner comes out and says, hey, this is really crappy for this community. We really need this help. Please do this. And I think that's what you're referring to, because insurance companies were like, okay, we're not going to have any questions about this 12-month thing. We all agree that's what the law is interpreted as in California, which was great. And now that's extended further, which is also great. Something that our agency definitely advocated for. But it just goes to show that that's still not long enough. I think anyone you talk to about insurance would say that needs to be at least 5 years. And I think secondarily, in FEMA, we have the same issue where, FEMA support's really here for 18 months. There are potential extensions, but we really significantly advocated for those extensions, and we basically got 3 additional months. And a lot of communities didn't get any additional months. So, what the more basically it comes back to the thing that we started with, right? The more vulnerable you are going in, the harder it is to navigate, the less time you have to make these decisions. And when you're making these financial decisions up against a very traumatic emotional experience, a lot of people either cannot do it, or they go the opposite way and they ignore their mental health because they feel like they just need to push through and just need to push forward. And, it's one step in time at a time, one step whenever you can make one. Some days people are going to be able to make great strides. Other days you're going to want to stay in bed, and it obviously poses a lot of stress on the family household and family unit.
Insurance is only part of the spectrum, so the roadmap to recovery includes personal finance decision making, right? So we have all these CPAs and certified financial planners that are our partners, and we're building these partnerships because we're looking for those CPAs that it's kind of like our lawyer volunteers. I'm not going to ask a CPA to do 1,000 free tax returns for disaster survivors, right? That's not realistic, and they're not going to do a good job anyway. But maybe one or two, or maybe they can teach and they can give guidance, and then they can train other CPAs on like what are the special rules, for casualty losses. So we're doing that, and the piece that I think really I'm looking forward to doing more of with you, it relates to the insurance gaps financing, and the whole like how do you avoid getting into a hole where you hire a builder and he flakes, or because again, like as wonderful as my organization is, we're in even though we've been around for 30 years, you go into a community, they've never heard of us, and but policy, what are you're an insurance company, so the reason that we promote the Roadmap to Recovery brand is because we do go beyond just insurance. We are looking at that holistic long-term recovery. And the reason that, we help stand up a long-term recovery group, or why, we use grant funds to have somebody on our team participate in a long-term recovery group, is because insurance kind of touches on all these other things, and it's all kind of related. It's insurance and rehousing is what it really is.
You asked about the bridge loan. So I know but for the listeners, the first federal money that comes out the door is the FEMA money, and that it's supposed to come out. I'll get 2 people and a fair amount in the first 6 months. Takes a year. Too many people don't get what they deserve or give up because of a bureaucratic and cumbersome process. We can talk about that separately. The next moment when the federal dollars arrive is when the HUD CDBG funds get there. That takes 16 to 30 months until funds start flowing to people. And there's reasons. Congress has to allocate or allocate funds to HUD. HUD has to publish rules for how the funds can be spent. States and cities have to come up with a plan to work within those rules that HUD has to approve. And then once the plan is approved, cities and states can hire contractors. Yeah. There are 3 mechanisms, by and large, that HUD supports and permits to fund rebuilding, or for dollars to flow through rebuilding. One is the state or city will pick a contractor for the homeowner. 2 is the homeowner picks a contractor and gets them certified to participate in the program. 3 is reimbursement. You spend your own money as soon as you can, and then you apply for reimbursement once the programs are running. Hands down, by multiples, the most efficient, least expensive, gets to most people model of distribution is reimbursement. However, by its very definition, reimbursement only works for people who have money. There are socioeconomic and racial equity implications of this. So there's a great model, but it only works for people who have money.
Yep.
SVP is launching in Louisiana a bridge loan program that it's raising a fund, will lend funds to people who are clearly going to qualify for the eventual CDBG program. will steward their construction. When funds are available, they'll apply and they'll reimburse the fund. We're going to pilot it in Louisiana. HUD has been seems to think that this is an appropriate mechanism. The governor of Louisiana is thrilled by it. And we think that this will be a game changer, not for SBP, but for the industry.
Right.
We expect, after sufficient proof points, bigger players to come in, push us out of the way, and truly get to scale.
Thank you for joining us on the podcast, How to Disaster. For more information, please visit our website at afterthefireusa.org. And if you liked this video, please hit subscribe.
Navigating the recovery process after a fire is challenging, particularly with the additional issues caused by COVID-19. Fannie Mae is here to help. If you live in a FEMA-declared disaster area, you can request free assistance from our Disaster Response Network. Fannie Mae, in partnership with Maury Management International's Project Porchlight, launched the Disaster Response Network in 2018. This program uses HUD-approved counselors to offer support. These counselors have been specially trained as disaster coaches. They address the challenges homeowners and renters face when recovering from a disaster. There's no charge for their services. The goal of the Disaster Response Network is to help people return to pre-disaster normal as quickly as possible. Clients are matched with a coach who work with them one-on-one throughout their recovery. In the initial conversation with clients, coaches review the status of the homeowner's recovery process, including current challenges, decisions that need to be made, and immediate long-term goals. They discuss topics like income and expenses, insurance, housing, credit or debt challenges, as well as aid or other assistance programs that may be available. This may include FEMA applications and Small Business Administration, or SBA, loans. The coach helps the client plan and prioritize the next steps for their recovery. Moving forward, the coach continues to be there for the client, reaching out to them regularly, at least monthly, but more often when needed, for up to 18 months' time. These regular check-ins provide the client the opportunity to ask questions, get help tackling challenges, and keep things moving as they work through their recovery. It's also where coaches can help identify new recovery assistance or grants that have become available, strategize new next steps for recovery, and talk through difficult decisions or priorities. One of the key ways coaches assist Disaster Response Network clients is by helping intervene when something has gone awry. Coaches will, with the clients on the line, call insurance companies to adjust their claims when costs exceed initial estimates, or call the client's creditors to request payment relief. The Disaster Response Network's approach ensures survivors have a personal financial expert working with them throughout their recovery. By helping minimize the financial impact of a disaster, survivors can recover more quickly. To get confidential disaster relief assistance, call the Disaster Response Network at 877-833-1746. Once again, that is 877-833-1746. Or visit knowyouroptions.com/relief for more information.